What's up, bosses? I'm Nikki Snyder, and it's time for the Truck Boss Show. This week, we find out who represents and speaks for truckers on Capitol Hill, and we share some of the struggles a first-year driver dealt with during the crazy year of 2020. Let's get rolling. And now we go to Man on the Street segment with Matt the Little Guy, who visits with the rookie driver who started his career during the pandemic and how he managed to survive and the challenges he faced.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Little Guy here at the Truck Boss Show, and I'm going to be interviewing my friend here, Sebastian. He's got a little over a year of experience in the trucking industry, but he got his first year of experience during the pandemic. And I want to ask you, what were some of your experiences as a brand new driver with the pandemic?
It was tough, man. A lot of restrictions on a lot of places you go to, truck stops, restaurants being closed down, for one.
How was that?
It was hard,
just finding food was a challenge, wasn't it?
It was a challenge, sometimes, I'd cook in the truck, but, a lot of times you ain't got no time to cook in the truck, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I did a lot of videos cooking in the truck, but, sometimes it's just not that easy. And with the pandemic, with, everything, it was just mostly just fast food options, right?
Yeah, or just trying to find, somewhere.
What about, facilities getting loaded and unloaded? What were your experiences with that?
Terrible. With workers being pulled out for social distancing, it takes you even longer than what it normally does.
Loading and unloading times.
Yeah.
What about facilities at those places?
They either cut it down to where it's no drivers or one person. It's not accommodatable for anyone.
Speaking from experience, I remember how easy it was to check in and check out at facilities to get loaded and unloaded. But now, with the pandemic, there are some facilities that have porta johns or porta potties, whatever you want to call them, out there for drivers, but most of them don't, right?
Yeah.
And how did that affect you as a new driver coming into the industry? What are your thoughts on, that alone?
It's terrible. It's inhumane, in my opinion. No one should be put through that, especially, your real essential workers, Without truck drivers, the world stops.
I completely agree with you. This is my buddy Sebastian. First year in trucking. Had to do it in a tough time in our world. One thing I always say is, bring baby wipes with you just in case.
Copy.
Copy's right. Anyway, Little Guy here at Truck Boss Show. Signing out. We'll see you guys next time. Be safe out there.
And well, that was a great story, but guys, I hope you took note. You got to make sure you stock up on them baby wipes. Now we go to our girl, Nikki. A lot of the country shut down in 2020 as millions of jobs went remote. But while others went home, you drivers didn't. You had to stay on the road to keep things moving. It put an even bigger spotlight on you all, showing everyone something most of us already knew. This country doesn't run without you. But despite being so important, a lot of the time the decisions made at the federal level are done so without your input. That's why our regulations correspondent Brad Kuhn went to work to find out who speaks for and represents you at the highest level. So check out part 1 of his report.
Today I want to talk about representation. Who speaks for independent owner-operators?
So OOIDA does, right? Obviously I work for OOIDA, but I mean that. And we feel like we're in a pretty good place to represent not only our members, but even non-members.
And so what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? How do you represent them?
Right now, we have 4 people working there in DC. We have a full-time presence there. Really, no other organization that represents drivers does have a full-time presence in DC. Our executives, Todd Spencer and Louis Pugh specifically, really focus most of their time on our advocacy efforts. They're giving us a lot of direction. They're getting a lot of direction from our board of directors, from our membership, and from a lot of non-members. I talk to non-members, non-OOIDA members every week.
So tell me about some of the biggest challenges.
So a couple of things. Partisanship and legislative gridlock is real, dysfunctional, ineffective for a long time. It's been very partisan. I've been at OOIDA for 7 years, and what I've seen in D.C. has only gotten worse. Before that, I worked on Capitol Hill for 8 years, and things were a lot better in 2006 than they were in 2014. The other thing that doesn't help is a lot of drivers are at times kind of their own worst enemy. Trucking is very fractured right now. You have OOIDA, you have the American Trucking Associations, the Truckload Carriers Associations, numerous other smaller trucking groups out there. It's very fractured, and a lot of times what we say is different from what others say, and that's sort of unique in trucking, because if you look at other industries, and I'm going to stick with transportation here, when Congress has a railroad question, they go to one place, and when they have a trucking question, there may be 6 or 10 places they go. So that doesn't help, kind of the fracture within trucking itself.
You've got the ATA, the American Trucking Associations, plural, and they represent a lot of the really big fleets. They may have fewer members, but those big fleets represent about 90% of the rolling stock out there. So is there a tendency for Congress to give the ATA more weight than they might give to OOIDA, even if you have more members?
Not really in Congress. No, I don't think they do. They're fighting Congress and other trucking interests just as we are. Their issues are a little bit different than ours. They had a lot of influence in the Trump administration. I don't know how that looks with President Biden. But no, I don't think their influence in Congress is more than we have. There's really nobody getting a lot done in Congress these days. That's true, whether you're in transportation or any other industry.
There's this desire for some reason to have an active working driver that doing some of the things that OOIDA is doing. Is that a workable solution?
The grassroots activism, picking up the phone, calling your lawmakers, sending them an email, offering yourself up as a resource on trucking issues. A lot more of that stuff has to happen.
Where is their point of entry?
First of all, figure out who your lawmaker is. There's a lot of people who don't know because they don't care or they don't have time, they're busy, whatever. I mean, politics isn't everything to everybody. But figure out who your lawmakers are. You're going to have one member of the U.S. House, 2 U.S. senators. You'll have a state rep and a state senator. So that's kind of the world that we live in. And just reach out to them, right? If you're focusing on Congress in D.C., reach out to your senators. Tell them who you are. This is my name. This is where I live. This is what I do for a living. Here's how I can be helpful to you. And if you have a trucking question, I've been driving for, X amount of years and I have X amount of miles under my belt. I mean, that's the stuff that lawmakers need to hear. Those are the people that we want lawmakers to talk to.
For the Truck Boss Show, I'm Brad Kuhn, and I'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Brad. And this is part 1, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss part 2 in the coming weeks. Man, Brad, that is some good information. I mean, he really does take a deep dive into that stuff,
Well, he's really good at that, getting all that information and then reporting back to us and a lot of people have questions and they wonder, but Brad just does a great job.
I know.
He has the right questions.
Yes, he does. And make sure to tune in next week because we've got Matt the Little Guy back to back. Find out who he's chatting with next out on the street. Plus, it's Women's History Month, and we're talking women in trucking. You won't want to miss that.
And don't forget our Boss Box giveaway. Just head over to our Facebook page and join Boss Nation to see how you can win.
And also be sure to check out the Bosscast, the podcast for you, the driver. It can be found on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And of course, like, share, and subscribe. We couldn't do this without your support.
Of course not. We're doing big things here on the Truck Boss Show. And well, Nikki, why do we do this?
Because you're the boss.